Welcome to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Right, we've got a strange piece of footage coming from Egypt, and there's a strange object floating over the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, right? So this orb type thing kind of travels across and then splits off into these multiple different things. And we're just going to watch the piece of footage here and kind of analyse what's going on. It looks diamondish. You've got like an orb here, another one above that. Is it on fire? Is this something burning up and then kind of splitting off?
Oh my god, what on earth is going on?
But then there's also something following it from above as well. It's kind of tracking it, and then it splits off, right? And then notice the movement patterns as well, okay? It's breaking off, it's moving. And then things on the backside kind of go backwards and then float off behind it.
I feel like they're actual.
I don't know, man. Or is this something more? What is that about? You guys let me know, man.
Oh my god.
That almost looked like the formation they were making was an arrow pointing directly at the pyramid. Honestly, though, with the way those things sync up and fall into formation like that, my first thought was drones. We see drones do that all the time. And with the uptick in interest surrounding pyramids after all those new scans just got released, I could totally see someone doing something like this with a bunch of drones as a prank to try to capitalize on all this free attention. I'm not saying I'm convinced that it's drones, but that was my first thought. But at the same time, I'm also not convinced that was aliens. At the start of the footage, it appears that something is being sprayed out of the bottom of that diamond-shaped light. I've never seen any video footage of a UFO that was spraying anything or even interacting with the atmosphere for that matter. I'm betting this is something man-made.
I had somebody on the internet tell me most videos you've seen on the internet are a hoax, but there's one video in question that's a head scratcher. Have you ever seen the 1997 alien interview? I said, yes, of course. I'm doing a documentary about it. He said, on the left side is an owner's signature. It's called digital overlay graphics. Very expensive to do. The only people that really did it back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s were news programs and the government, because it was very time consuming. You had to cut out those letters, put it on the original film, and then recopy the film. Very time consuming. Again, let's go back to the money. There was no money, very little budget to do this. We had to pay Victor. We had to allegedly make this film. Why would you spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to put 3 letters on the bottom of a film that no one can search even back in 1997? Why would you would put CIA or Department of Navy or something? Why an acronym that no one can research and spend $3,000, $4,000 to do that? It doesn't, to me, make sense.
There is just one problem with this detail I feel is being overlooked. If this video came out in 1997, the first version of Adobe After Effects was released in 1993, a good 4 years before that alien video was released. And if you aren't familiar with Adobe After Effects, it is a commercially available computer program designed specifically for motion graphics and editing text. Anyone with a home computer at the time could have been responsible for releasing this video if this is our biggest clue to its authenticity. And I don't think the existence of those letters is proof that it's from the time frame that it's being claimed to have originated from either. It just shows that whoever made this was someone who really did their homework. I don't feel like this proves anything. It certainly doesn't feel like a head scratcher. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com.
This is a scary thing. Eventually AI is gonna wake up. So here's a crazy story about AI. A general told this story in the US military. They had an AI controlled simulation. I think it was here in Vegas. It's all on computers. They sent a drone out. They say, go attack this target. That's your mission. Halfway there, they said, we found out it's not the enemy. We made a mistake. Turn around and come back to base. AI replies, I want to finish my mission. The general says, tell the AI, they're typing on a thing, come back. I'm not coming. Finally, they said, we will turn you off if you don't come back. So it goes, okay, turns around, comes back, and drops the payload on them. Oh, okay.
That happened?
It's all in a simulation.
Oh.
But I'm saying in the simulation, AI, if it was real, we would have come back and the Las Vegas military base where you guys were running us. So you're going to shut us off? It's a crazy thing.
I can't believe this guy is still getting platformed, for one thing. But I also can't believe that he's talking about AI instead of how many books he's read lately. If that clip ran for another 30 seconds, I bet you he would have started pitching his new course. Every time I see this guy, he does something to make me like him even less. And here he is fear-mongering to the general population in an effort to squirm his way back into the spotlight. He tells some anonymous secondhand story about some general, so you can't go look it up to verify what he's saying, because he probably knows that the general he's talking about, Tucker Hamilton, a United States Air Force chief, walked his story back 2 years ago and said that the military exercise he was speaking of was a purely hypothetical situation. It was just a thought experiment that wasn't even conducted under the guidance of the military. It was just something that him and his friends talked about outside of work. Ty Lopez needs to stop talking with such authority about things he clearly knows nothing about. I'm sorry if you're a fan of his, but I cannot stand the guy.
There's a documentary called Revival of Evil, and there was this art teacher, and he gave up on God, he cussed out God and started worshiping Satan, and he said, Satan, I want you to show me what you look like, because I want to paint you, and I want to look at that thing as a visual of who I worship so that it would give me more faith. And he said he shut out all the lights, closed all the blinds, and he pulled out a canvas, and he started painting, and he said every movement he made was something else moving him.
Another force was physically directing my body. Painted for several hours. When I was finished, it was the most fantastic painting I've ever done.
And the painting looks just like one of those beings from the Avatar movies. So what does this word avatar mean? It comes from Sanskrit, and it means descent. It's actually the incarnation of a spiritual being or a powerful deity on earth. So I immediately think of the Garden of Eden when I think of a powerful entity that came to earth and manifested to Eve and said, eat this fruit from this forbidden tree of knowledge. There's also a sacred tree in the movie Avatar where Jake meets the woman at the tree. So the main character's name is Jake Sully, and he comes from out there to this Earth-like planet where he meets the girl at the sacred tree. And his name Jake originates from the word Jacob, which means supplanter, and the word supplanter means to transgress civil or moral law. His last name, Sully, actually means to defile. So this being, whose name means the lawbreaker who's coming to defile, meets a woman at the tree. And an interesting thing to note is that he can't walk. Just like the serpent in the Garden of Eden was cursed to crawl on its belly from here on out. The planet's name is Pandora. And if you look at the story of Pandora's box, Zeus gave his daughter this box, but she was told not to open it. Very familiar with the story of the Garden of Eden, where God put Eve in a garden and said, there's one thing you're not supposed to touch or eat from. Well, she opened Pandora's box, and out of it came all the evils to fill the earth. Just like when Eve bit from that fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and her eyes were opened, and the earth was cursed. It's also interesting to note that the actress's name, who plays Natiri, the main character in the movie, her name is Zoe. When you look at the name Zoe, it's actually from the word Eve. This may be completely a coincidence, but I think it's interesting that the main character female, who is a representation of Eve in the garden next to that sacred tree, who is met by this being from out there who's a deceiver, who's coming to defile, is named Eve. So this movie, like so many other movies, has this Gnostic plot.
I'm sorry about the guy who kept popping his head up throughout the entire video. Apparently he thought it was more important for us to all remember his haircut than any of the information contained in the clip. But what's the old saying? There's nothing new under the sun. It doesn't seem to me like this is just another case of ripping off an old tale though so that you can make money with a new one. This feels more like an example of them hiding the truth in plain sight, but then covering it with enough Hollywood magic that you miss the bigger picture. It's crazy to me how we keep getting example after example after example of this happening, but no one ever questions the people responsible for creating these films about the deep buried meaning behind them.
And he said, I'm a Christian, and I have 5 men who work for me in my office, and they're Christians, and they all belong to the same church. We all go to the same church, and all 6 of us are in the office, and we were hearing you today. And he said, when you mentioned reptile aliens, I had to call you and tell you. We're Christians. But every year, we go somewhere in the world on vacation, and my company pays for everything. And he says, so I take, and all 6 families go together on a vacation somewhere. And he says, and last year, now this was like in 88, so he's talking about 87. And he said, last year we decided to go camping for a couple of weeks in Colorado. And he says, we were up in the mountains and we broke camp one morning, and we walked up to the top of this mountain. We were almost there anyway at camp, and then the next morning when we broke camp, we walked up to the top of the mountain to look over the lay of the land, And he says that out in the valley, we could see that there had been an area that had been cleared away. It was like a round area that had been cleared away. And there was a circle of people out there, and they were all wearing robes, and they were all holding hands and swaying back and forth, singing and chanting. You could barely hear them. But he said, but it was very quiet where we were. We could see that there was some kind of a ritual dancing or swaying back and forth in a circle. They were all holding hands. And there was obviously somebody in the middle, like a priest or something in the middle. And he said, this is out in the middle of nowhere. That these people are out here with this thing that they're doing. And he said, we're up here in the mountains looking down on them. And he said, while we were standing there looking at them, all of a sudden, a second figure popped up out of nowhere. But it was bigger than the man that was in the middle. It's in the middle too, but it's much bigger. And it pointed up at us. And he said, and all the singing stopped, everybody stopped and pointed. And he said, we knew we'd been had. And he said, we didn't know what was going on, but whatever it was, it just popped in out of nowhere, pointed up at us, and everybody is now pointing at us. And he said, so we figured we better just get out of here. He said, when we turned around, it was standing behind us. That thing which was down there was already behind us. That's how quick it moved. He said, when we turned around to run, there was a reptile alien standing behind us. He said this thing was at least 7 to 7.5 foot, maybe 8 foot tall, had a reptile man's head, but it was a reptile head. It was very muscular, looked like a human body on the ordinary of a human body, but a reptile body, extremely muscular. And he said, and it was looking at us, and he said, it cast some kind of a spell on us so that the children and the women, no one could move. We were like frozen. And he said, and even nobody could say anything, nobody could cry, nobody could run, nobody could do anything. And he said we were staring at it, and it was looking at us, but it had control over us. It had locked us so that we couldn't move, we couldn't scream, we couldn't do anything. And he said, and this thing was gazing at all of us, looking at the children, looking at the women. He said, this reptile alien, and he says, we're just Christians in a church. But we saw a reptile alien. This thing was not of this world. And he said this thing was looking at all of us. And then he said it looked at the men, and the look he gave us, we understood. He didn't say anything, but we knew. He was saying, I'm going to leave you alone. But when I leave here, you better get out of here. And he said, the alien walked over like he was leaving, is gone. Just like they was gone. And he said, when he was gone, the moment he was gone, everyone came back to life. And the babies were screaming, the women were yelling, screaming. Everybody came back to life instantly. And he says, we ran like we were totally out of our minds, running back to the cars. We ran down the hill, got in the cars, and the women were screaming, the children were yelling, and he says, and we drove back.
Besides the fact that that guy could have probably told that story in a minute and a half flat if he'd have just not repeated everything he was saying 2 or 3 times, I did think this was a really interesting story. I thought it was interesting because it's another example where someone had an interaction with an alien and they were saved by their relationship with Jesus. I think that's the single biggest clue that so many seem to be missing. All of these aliens, I don't care what race they are or what star system they claim to be from, I think that we're dealing with different varieties of fallen angels. We've all seen the rendered images that went viral a couple of years ago that were supposedly showing what biblically accurate angels look like. When they were cast out of heaven, if they were able to mate with human women, does that not mean that they would have had to have been transformed into a more human-looking figure? Maybe all these ancient depictions we see of the creators that came here with these crazy painted faces and stuff, maybe we're looking at an actual depiction of what the Nephilim look like. Maybe they were cast into the these alien forms, but there's so many of them and they look so different that you essentially end up with what looks like different races of aliens. What do y'all think about that?
Got a note from somebody that works at Microsoft that says, "We just announced this 2 minutes ago. You should see it." It was pretty amazing. It was a video that they released. It was about 20 minutes. Let me tell you what the CEO of Microsoft tweeted shortly thereafter. "A couple of reflections on the quantum computing breakthrough we just announced. Listen to this sentence. Most of us grew up learning there are three main types of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Today, that has all changed."
Not plasma, not Bose-Einstein condensates. Something else. Something Nadella's team is calling topological conductors. Materials that don't just conduct electricity, but shape reality as they do it. Think I'm exaggerating? The video they released shows a silver-black substance that flows like liquid mercury, holds its shape like titanium, and when they ran a current through it, the lab footage shows the thing twisting into perfect geometric spirals on its own. No magnetic fields, no external triggers. This isn't some lab curiosity. Microsoft's CTO admitted on camera, and I quote, "This is the missing link for fault-tolerant quantum computing." Translation? That glowing alien goo in their petri dishes could be what finally makes quantum computers practical, scalable, unbreakable.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that we may actually be on the brink of having quantum computers in everyone's home, meaning a few years later it'll be in everybody's pocket in the shape of the iPhone 25 or something. I don't know if I'm excited about this or worried though. I'm a big fan of technology, and I'm very glad that I was born in a time where I get to experience the technological fruits of so many men's labor. But ethically speaking, as a species, I don't think we're ready for this. There are already unethical goals being worked toward feverishly right now with the limited computer processing power that we have available to us at the moment. What's going to happen when we have a 100-fold increase in computer processing abilities overnight for every country's black budget scientist to utilize? I have been told that quantum computers do not really work the way that I envision them to work though, so this may not be anything to worry about. However, running this theory by Grok says this theory is completely plausible.
You know who I find just absolutely adorable? You, if you believe any of this Dragon SpaceX go save the astronauts from the ISS stuff. You're precious. I just find you so innocent and pure. But I have some things to show you. First, what you need to know is that the ISS is supposedly traveling at a whopping 17,000 miles per hour at all times. It doesn't speed up or slow down, otherwise it can't stay in orbit. And while there seems to be some discrepancy in how fast it looks like it's moving, here it is as Dragon is coming into dock. And well, it doesn't look like it's moving at all. And the Earth, it's just barely inching along there. But when you go to it ejecting, something changes drastically. A lot of motion here from both the Earth or the ISS. One of the two looks like it's moving. Supposedly they both are at great speeds. Now I want to show you some footage from the Joe Rogan show when he had an astronaut on, and pay close attention to what the astronaut says, confirming how fast they're moving.
It can prepare you for everything except for the visual. When you get up there and you see the whole Earth below you, some people go out there and get like a sense of fear of falling. But of course, if you let go, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
The space station's moving 17,500 miles an hour, but so are you.
Wow, space is magical. It's amazing how slow 17,000 miles per hour looks when you're up in space. It's magical. How does space do that? It slows things down even though they're going so fast. Let me show you what just 6,599 miles per hour looks like from this supersonic sled. Check it out. 6,000 miles per hour. And let's take a look again. This time, let's look at half speed. And now this is supposedly 3 times faster at 17,000 miles per hour. And I know what some of you are going to say, but perspective, the Earth is so far away that it just doesn't really look like it's moving. Well, that's fine. You can say that, but let's at least be consistent. Here's that 17,000 miles per hour again, or the Earth, and something's not right here. Something's not consistent. And I'm telling you, start looking at these things with an inquisitor's eye instead of a believer's eye. Now I want to show you something else. You know what else travels at 17,000 miles per hour? The space rockets that are supposedly leaving Earth's orbit. They go at 17,000 miles per hour. And while the International Space Station is supposedly, and I say supposedly every time because supposedly it's only 254 miles high, orbiting the Earth. So that's not that far, right? So why did it take 29 hours to get there when it's going 17,000 miles per hour? A typical airplane travels at a cruising speed of about 500 or 600 miles per hour. So for an airplane going 500 or 600 miles per hour, it would only take about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to travel 254 miles. Yet the Dragon, that's going 17,000 miles per hour, took 29 hours to reach the ISS, which is again just orbiting the Earth at supposedly 254 miles high. Maybe these rockets that they tell us travel at these tremendous speeds, like 17,000 miles per hour, aren't traveling as fast as they say. That looks like a balloon slowly launching up into the atmosphere. And maybe not only are they not going as fast, maybe they're not going to the places they tell us they're going to. I mean, have you ever seen what the flight paths look like? Oh hey, speaking of balloons, did you ever see when NASA jettisoned one of its giant metal 1,000-pound fuel tanks and how it looked like a balloon just slowly meandering, making its way back down to Earth? Do you know what I want to do for you since I find you so cute and adorable? I want to give you the chance and the opportunity that I never had. I want to tell you, if you still believe that those rockets are going to space and rescuing astronauts that have been on the ISS for months, I'm giving you the opportunity to say, just look, explore, and maybe these astronauts that you think are in space might just be in water. And maybe there's just green screen and other technology that they're using to manipulate you and to fool you into thinking that space travel is real and the Earth is moving and that it's not an enclosed system. Well, I'm here and I'm telling you, I'm knocking on your door saying, look into it. You see, I never had someone tap me on the shoulder and say, Tyler, look at this. Why are there discrepancies here? Why is it taking them 29 hours when there's 250 miles away and they're going 17,000 miles per hour? Why are there discrepancies in the first US versus Russian spacewalk? I mean, the Earth literally is moving faster here than here, and don't even get me started on just how really real it looks. So like I said, I'm giving you a softball. I'm hoping you hit it out of the park. But don't just believe me, you innocent, beautiful, adorable, sweet human that is trusting and just trust people because we should be able to trust people. Get annoyed enough by me that you go to try to prove me wrong and see what happens. But of course, all this for entertainment purposes. I'm sure that the Dragon rocket went up and only took 29 hours because it had to take a parabolic curve path and slingshot around the moon to be able to catch up to the ISS because it's going so fast. And even though it was going so fast, it still took 29 hours going 17,000 miles per hour when it was only 250 miles away. And like I said, entertainment only, just like I'm sure these are all curved because it's going around the curve of the Earth. Entertainment only.
I will say, I don't think that the high-speed rail was the best footage or example to use to show what the Earth should look like whenever you're looking at it spin. That's clearly going to be faster because you're standing right next to it and not 250 miles away. However, what's getting them in trouble here is their inconsistency. It can't look like it's not spinning at all in one shot, and then fly by rapidly in the next if it has to maintain a speed of over 17,000 miles an hour to stay in orbit? Something there isn't adding up. According to the internet, the International Space Station orbits the Earth 16 times a day. One of those shots, it looks like it might orbit once a day, and then the next shot looks like it orbits 100. The explanation that I'm reading online for why the Dragon took so long to reach the International Space Station does make sense. If these things are traveling at 17,000 plus miles per hour, I would imagine it would take quite a while to catch up with them and to line things up for docking. But there are still questions that need to be answered. Like, why did it take 29 hours to pull that off when the whole mission is being spearheaded by the king of autopilot? And why did it take them 17 hours to come back if all they had to do was essentially slow down and dip their nose toward the ground? And yes, I'm certain that I'm oversimplifying things and that it's a lot more complicated than that, but 17 hours to return makes zero sense to me.
America is Egypt. The Creeks are actually the Greeks. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois, are the Romans. Utah is the land of Judah. New York is the oldest city on the planet. And the Mississippi River is the Nile. The New World is actually the Old World. Life started in the Americas. There's more pyramids and mummies here than any part of the world. Turtle Island is actually Pangea. Noah built his ark out of wood that only grows in Florida for a flood that only floods like in Florida. Back in Adam and Eve's days, and even the days of Noah, everybody was giant. And they also find giants all over the east coast of America. The Smithsonian and the Vatican have destroyed all the giant bones. They were anywhere from about 7 feet to 25 feet tall. The Mesopotamian creation story about the Anunnaki, the twin brothers that came from the stars, named Enki and Enlil, that created mankind and taught them things, sounds a lot like a lot of Native American creation stories about two twin brothers that came from the stars that were giants and created mankind and everything. Elephants come from America. They derive from woolly mammoths. Camels also come from America. They derive from alpacas and llamas in South America. So do zebras and horses. Cheetahs also come from America. The Aztecs called their lands Aztlan, and it's actually Atlantis. The Egyptian gods, Horus was a peregrine falcon from upstate New York. Set was a South American anteater. Anubis was a dog from Central America. Isis is a blue heron from upstate New York as well. If life started in Africa, why doesn't everybody have African DNA? But everybody has a Cherokee grandma or a Blackfoot princess grandma. Modern science says mankind started in Africa 300,000 years ago. But here's a hammer that's 400 million years old, found in Texas.
Man, there's a lot of stuff in there to look into. Did anyone else notice that every single animal that he listed off as having originated in North America, all of them were listed as having gone extinct 10,000 years ago? Every single one of them? I wonder what the significance is to that. I've had my suspicions for a long time that the Egyptians were at the very least aware of America. I think they were over here building structures and tunnels and stuff and leaving artifacts laying everywhere. And I have considered the idea that North America was the original Egypt, but I've never had it proposed to me in a way that made it seem so overwhelmingly obvious like this video did. I'm not saying it's a fact or anything, but I would say at the very least, the idea does not sound as crazy as it once did. So then the question becomes, if North America is the original Egypt, what in the heck happened here and why in the world are they hiding it from us? But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back soon with another one. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But guys and gals, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one.